Sure. So the existence of, so I'm going to make now an Aristotelian / Aquinas argument for the existence of God. So the basic idea, and I'm going to try and boil this down so that it makes some sense. The basic Aristotelian argument for the existence of an unmoved mover is the idea that there are a bunch of, every object around you has actual and potential, right? It has an actuality and it has potential. So if you have a candle and it's made of wax, it has the potential to be a pool of wax, but that potential is not fulfilled unless something acts upon it. The only thing that can act upon an object and make it fulfill its potential is either another object that has its own potential or something that is pure actuality, right? It does not have any potential. It's just actual. It just exists, right? So the idea in the Aristotelian argument for God is that if you don't want an infinite regress of causes, if you don't want an infinite regress of things that have actuality and potential, and then something has to actualize it, and something has to actualize it, and something has to actualize it, you have to come to the unactualized actualizer, right? A thing that just is, right? A thing that just exists, and as Aquinas says, this is what we call God, right? This thing that exists and has the capacity to actualize the potential of other objects. And so this is his argument for the existence of God, that otherwise you get an infinite regress, and there need not be an infinite regress of causes. Now, this is a basic Aristotelian argument, as I say, that is shaped by Aquinas. There are other good arguments about this. One is based on the principle of sufficient reason, this idea that we have the capacity to understand the universe. So if you believe that you have the capacity to understand the universe, which most scientists and atheists believe, that we have the capacity to understand the universe, are there limitations to that capacity? So the principle of sufficient reason suggests there are no limitations, we just don't have enough information, but if given proper information, we can understand every aspect of the universe. If that's the case, then you have to ask, okay, that creates a system where, to understand things, things are contingent on one another, right? If a baseball hits a window, that's contingent on me hitting the baseball. So again, and this is true for every scientific law, laws of nature, right? If there's a law of gravity, then we try and discover why is there that law of gravity? Where did that come from? And so the idea is that if you're a believer that we have the capacity to understand all of these things, and that we have the sufficient reason to understand the universe, then there has to be something outside the system of contingencies that got the ball rolling in the first place, right? A timeless being that is pure existence. Again, it's a very similar argument. A timeless being, it has to exist outside of time because otherwise it would be fulfilling a potential. Things inside time always have a potential to be fulfilled, but things outside of time don't have a potential to be fulfilled. So I've described to you a being that has pure existence, that exists outside of time, and that has the potential to actualize anything. That's God. So that's the argument in favor of God. Now, you don't have to buy it, but that's the evidence-based argument in favor of God. The problem that I have with scientific materialism is that all of human society is based on notions that are directly contrary to scientific materialism. And the reason that I say that atheism is not a good basis for a moral system is that atheism is not the basis for any moral system. There's no guiding principle. I can make an equally valid argument on one side or another based on a system where there is no God, and not only no God, no being that created the universe in order to perform certain functions. So if you read Aristotle, what Aristotle says is that human beings were created to perform a certain function. Sorry, long-winded answer. That human beings were created to perform a certain function. That function was to reason, right? This is Aristotle's idea. And so every object was created to perform a certain function. If you don't believe that, if you believe that everything arose spontaneously or randomly, that just came about through pure chance, then you can't say that there is an is-ought gap that David Hume points out that is unbridgeable. You can't get from is to ought, and you have to make up your own moralities. That's the basic argument.
Okay. I actually agree with you with a lot of that, right? I don't think atheism is a point that we can really build off.
I'm not saying, by the way, that atheists can't be moral people. They absolutely can, of course.
I'm not saying you are.
Yeah.
I simply, so how did you rule out, though, a naturalistic explanation, though, for the existence of reality? Because it kind of sounds like a God of the gaps argument, right? Where it's like, or an argument from incredulity, right? So essentially, I can't think of a better argument, therefore my argument, or therefore God.
No, I don't think that that's right. I think that the God of the gaps would say, things I don't know, I'm going to attribute to God. I'm saying that in order for anything to be actualized, there has to be something, and this is a basic principle.
Okay, thank you. Just really quick with that point and stuff. So if you're not familiar with like theoretical physicists, or particle physicists,
yes.
John Carroll and Lawrence,
Mm-hmm.
right, where essentially
They say things kind of wink and blink out of existence, yes.
Yeah, with essentially things function different on a quantum level, right? So we live in a realm of Newtonian physics.
Right.
So different, essentially, realm of domain of applicability is the
Yes. No, I understand this argument, yeah. So the Aristotelian Aquinas answer to that would be, you're still suggesting that there's a system in which that happens. Where does that system come from?
Okay, yeah, and
Because otherwise you end up, basically you end up with three final analyses of the possibilities of the universe. One is the unmoved mover, one is an infinite regress of causes, and one is the brute fact, the kind of Bertrand Russell argument that there are just brute facts to the universe and we can't understand them. Well, that doesn't really explain anything, the brute fact thing, right? That is a God of the gaps argument, right? That's saying we can't explain it, so it's a brute fact, we're done. That's the same thing as a God of the gaps argument. Cool, thank you.
Hello, my name is Constantino, and I just graduated high school 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to attend Emory University in the fall. And in our English class, we were shown an extremely feminist video displaying the Fox News as one of the main news sources that displays, I guess, anti-feminist views.
Right, because all the women are attractive.
Yeah, exactly, pretty much. So what are your thoughts on, I guess, feminism in general and everything like that?
Well, I mean, feminism, the original point of feminism was a good point, which was a lot of men acted like pigs, right? I mean, that's true. The problem is the solution of feminism was, okay, let's have women act like pigs also, as opposed to let's hold men to a higher standard, which is really what should have happened. They destroyed the very institutions that benefit women the most. You know who's benefited from feminism the most is men. Men have benefited enormously. We have to work less. You know, listen, if I can get my wife is in medical school at UCLA, I promise you, I'm going to take a sabbatical the minute she starts working. You know, feminism, women in the workplace is a wonderful thing. My mom was a working woman. My dad was actually home with kids. Feminism was very good about getting women into the workplace. What feminism was very bad about was the idea you have to destroy all traditional values in order to get women into the workplace. That's a lie. It's not true at all. The greatest institution in the history of mankind for women is monogamous marriage. It is the greatest institution in the history of mankind. Before that, women were just they were members of harems, and they were victims of sexism on a routine basis. Marriage, anybody who's married, you guys aren't married yet, marriage is about equality. That's what a marriage is about. It's not about, the feminists have this idea of marriage that it's a patriarchal institution in which the man bosses the wife around. If that's the case, my wife certainly hasn't heard about it. So, you know, feminism has made a lot of mistakes, among them the idea that of separating marriage from sexuality, the idea that women should act exactly like men, that men and women are exactly the same. That's unnecessary. Men and women can have equal rights without being exactly the same. But the Sex and the City version of femininity is really quite repulsive and has led many young women to damage their lives because they buy into the idea that they can have sex with as many people as you know, promiscuous men would, and it will have no impact on them. Men and women are very different. They treat sex very differently. I mean, for men, there's only one question. Well, there are two questions: when and where, right? And women generally like to ask the question who. Well, Sex in the City says that women should not even bother asking the question who. They should just treat it like men treat it. And that's devastating because men and women are not built the same. They don't treat sex the same. They don't treat relationships the same. Women civilize men. That's what women do. It's one of the things women do. And men are supposed to provide for women. That doesn't mean that women can't provide also. They should provide also. It's great. I've insisted to my wife. I promise you, right now she's studying for boards, and every other day I'm hearing about how she wants to quit med school. And I tell her, you know, God forbid something should happen to me. I want to make sure that you can provide for yourself. I think it's very important that women get an education and you know, be able to are independent. I think women's independence is a phenomenal thing. That was the good news about feminism. The bad news about feminism is that they felt they had to destroy the superstructure on which all of Western civilization is built in order to get women into the workplace.
Last question. Hey, Haley Evans. I'm from Frisco Heritage High School in Texas. How do you combat an argument with homosexuals who don't want to have children?
I'm sorry, so what's their argument? Oh, what do they say that they don't want to have? Oh, I understand. The homosexual couple doesn't want to have kids. I've actually taken the position on gay marriage that the government should get out of the business of marriage completely. The reason that I've taken this position is not because I don't believe in traditional marriage. It's actually because I do believe in traditional marriage, and I live in the state of California, and I see what the left is doing. The original purpose, you have to go back to the original purpose of why the government was involved in marriage. The original reason the government was involved in marriage was to promote traditional marriage. That was a failure. Okay, we now have 75% of kids in the black community being born out of wedlock. We are getting to the point where pretty soon a majority of kids, period, will be born out of wedlock because it's been escalating tremendously in the white community as well. And you know, the institution of government-sponsored marriage has basically failed. Nobody I know gets married because they're doing it for the tax benefits. In fact, you get hit worse on taxes if you're married. There's a marriage penalty. what the left is doing now with same-sex marriage is not about two dudes living together or two ladies living together and living the life that they want to, or even having contractual relationships that allow them to do exactly what they want. We have civil unions in California. You can make a contract. I can make a contract with anybody in this room to visit me on my deathbed, although I doubt you want to do that. You can do any of that stuff. There's nothing preventing that. What the same-sex marriage agenda is about is disestablishing any sort of religion in the country. That is really what is at the root of this. And the proof is in the pudding. California state legislature right now is going to use same-sex marriage as a lever in order to take away nonprofit status from every religious youth group in the state. There's a bill working its way through the California legislature right now that would remove nonprofit status from any youth organization that discriminates on the basis of sexual orientation or religion or even gender. So if my synagogue decides that it doesn't want evangelical Christian coming in and proselytizing, we can have our nonprofit status revoked, and vice versa. If your church decides they don't want an Orthodox Jew and they're talking about Jesus, you can have your nonprofit status revoked. That is the goal here. The left's goal here is not tolerance. It's not acceptance. The left's goal here is destruction of traditional social institutions. That's the reason why gay marriage matters. Now, the reason I say that we ought to disestablish it is because once gay marriage is established in the state of California, and gang, it's coming. Whether it comes to referendum or whether it comes by Supreme Court decision, we're going to come pretty quickly to the point in this country where the government is signing off on gay marriages and elevating them to the same level as heterosexual marriages. The next step is exactly what I'm talking about, revoking nonprofit status for churches that refuse to provide gay marriages, revoking nonprofit status for Catholic charities that refuse to allow gay couples to adopt. That already happened in Massachusetts. In Massachusetts, the Catholic Church no longer handles adoptions because the Catholic Church was not willing, according to its moral scruples, to hand over a kid to a non-married heterosexual couple. And so they've had to get out of the business because their nonprofit status is going to be revoked. Did that serve any of the kids? Absolutely not. So this is why the issue matters. And I feel horrible for people who are caught up in the situation where they're gay and they feel like they can't get married and they feel discriminated against. But this is not a privacy issue. Remember we talked about spotting philosophical inconsistencies? This is not a privacy issue. The whole premise of gay marriage is that what I do, well, really the whole premise of the homosexual rights movement is what I do behind closed doors shouldn't matter to you. And we all sort of agree with that, right? Instinctively, we all agree. What I do behind... How is it behind closed doors when the state's approving of what you do? Now we're talking public policy. It's actually a very dangerous position for the gay community to take, because now it does matter what I think of you. The beauty of America is you can do what you want behind closed doors as long as you're not hurting anyone else. You don't have to care what I think. I can think what you're doing is sinful and wrong and stupid and all those things. You don't have to care. But once you start forcing me to care because you're coming after my synagogue, then I'm going to start caring. And that's a very dangerous position. It's not good honestly, it's not good for gay rights activists because when the backlash comes, it's going to be pretty strong. And it may be stronger than they're expecting. And that will not be good for a lot of gay folks in this country.